Hello everyone and welcome to yet another Jujutsu Kaisen character discussion. Today I'm going to be talking about the one who left it all behind, the heavenly tyrant, Toji Fushiguro, also known as the father of Megumi Fushiguro, one of the members of our main cast. Much like Gojo, Toji is, as far as I can tell, a fan favorite character, which is pretty understandable. He's a huge badass, all around very cool guy for a number of reasons. So that's why I'm here to talk about him today. Before I get into talking about Toji himself, I think it's important to sort of set the context for the setting that created Toji, the way the Jujutsu Society works, and specifically the Zenin family. So, as we've learned throughout the series, the Zenin family places a lot of importance on the curse techniques that its members have. And if you're a member of the Zenin family who has a really crappy curse technique, or you don't have one at all, you're basically considered worthless. You have no value to them. And we learn about this from Volume 0, right from the get-go, before it was even Jujutsu Kaisen. We learn about this from Maki Zenin. So, Maki is much like Toji, and she was born with a heavenly restriction that gives her superhuman strength, but in return, she has no curse technique, and she can't even see curses without glasses. So, the Zenin family basically decided that Maki was pretty much worthless, and she decided that she was going to leave, get super good, and then come back to take over the Zenin family and prove what a bunch of stupid assholes they are. Pretty commendable stuff. Now, it's because of this that Maki has a grade 4 ranking as a sorcerer, which is the bottom of the barrel. A grade 4 sorcerer is not good for very much, which is not at all reflective of what Maki is capable of. As we have seen through all of her showings, and as other characters have pointed out, Maki is extremely capable. She is probably the most powerful member of the second years currently present in the story. Of course, she has nothing on Akotsu being a special grade. But all around, a grade 4 ranking is totally unfair and doesn't scratch the surface of how valuable Maki is as a sorcerer. Enter Toji. Toji is essentially Maki on fucking steroids. His heavenly restriction makes it so that he has no cursed energy whatsoever. But in return, his senses, his strength, and his endurance are all elevated to a degree that is nothing short of superhuman. His senses are so amplified that he can still detect curses without needing cursed energy. He's just that good. And as we have seen through Toji's showings, defeating Gojo, albeit a tired and exhausted Gojo, and one that hadn't mastered the Infinity yet, a fully aware Suguru Geto, who was using a imaginary vengeful spirit, which we have seen are very powerful, and the special grade cursed Dagon, who is a member of the disaster spirits, which are honestly like on a whole nother level from normal special grades like the Sukuna Finger curse wounds that we've seen. You could call them very special grades if you want. Defeating a disaster spirit with no difficulty. Toji is an absolute monster. He is one of the strongest characters in the series. If it were not for the Zenin family's obsession with cursed techniques and cursed energy, there is no doubt in my mind that Toji would be classified as a special grade sorcerer. I mean, just look at what Toji is capable of and tell me the guy wouldn't be a special grade. He is able to defeat special grade sorcerers on his own with next to no difficulty. It's insane. So, because of the Zenin clan's discrimination against people who are lacking in good techniques or in cursed energy, Toji was ostracized and eventually left the Zenin family. He married into the Fushiguro family, which, as far as we can tell, are non-sorcerers, and he had a son named Megumi. We'll discuss the importance of Megumi in a little bit. But Toji had essentially decided that he didn't care about anyone else, or even himself anymore, and just sort of wanted to live. And by live, I mean just sort of going about his day, going about his life, making money, and just sort of surviving week to week and doing his thing. Didn't really have much of anything to live for. Now, with how powerful Toji is, he became, I guess, what you could describe as a mercenary. Pretty much anyone who had money, he would work for them. He would always go to the highest bidder. And this results in Toji eventually getting a job from the Star Plasma cult to go find the Star Plasma vessel. As we see in the Hidden Inventory arc, the discrimination of the Zenin clan, their outcasting of Toji, essentially creates this wild card of immense power that is just completely uncontrollable by the Zenin family and the Jujutsu world unless they're going to pay him. So they essentially created an exceptionally dangerous rogue element with their own stupidity, which is not great, especially when we consider how important the Star Plasma vessel is in relation to Tengen, and the fact that not allowing Tengen to put his consciousness into the Star Plasma vessel would result in him evolving, whatever that means, we don't really know yet, and jeopardizing the future of humanity. Toji, being a person who doesn't care about any of that stuff, is just going to go along with it. So you can definitely see why Toji becoming this rogue mercenary is such an issue. So, as we see in the Hidden Inventory arc, he goes in, he kills Rico, he beats Geto, he seemingly kills Gojo, but Gojo, being Gojo, survives this, of course. Per his own admission, if Toji had cut his head off, he would have won, but since he didn't do that, he'd lost. Now, the final fight between Toji and Gojo is very interesting, because Toji had originally planned on just sort of leaving and, going back about his business, getting his pay from the Star Plasma cult, and just, betting on more horse races. But when Gojo gets back up, Toji has this urge, this need to kill Gojo. He needs to fight him. Now, why does he need to do this? Well, when Toji said that he didn't really care about his own self-worth, he was lying to himself. Gojo is the embodiment of the Jujutsu world. He is the most powerful sorcerer of their generation. He is the peak of sorcery. He represents everything that rejected Toji. So in Toji's mind, him being able to defeat Gojo would essentially be him saying, see, you guys are wrong. I am as great as it gets. This whole, oh, you're only as great as your Jujutsu technique or whatever, it's all a bunch of bullshit, and I'm going to kill this guy that you are holding up as the prodigy, the golden child of our time. And of course, this results in Toji being killed because Gojo is Gojo. We understand that the Infinity Technique is beyond busted, and not everyone knows about Purple. Toji didn't know about Purple, so he kind of got wrecked there, had his whole left side of his chest obliterated. And as he's dying, Toji realizes that he was lying to himself, and that he had thought that he didn't care about his own pride, that he didn't care about other people, and that in trying to live that way, he had warped himself. He was not being true to himself, he was being somebody other than Toji Fushiguro. And at that point, he had lost, because he had wanted to prove that Toji Fushiguro was better than the Zenin clan thought he was. But in going about it the way he did, he was not true to himself, and as such failed in his goal before he had even reached the finish line. Now, as he's dying, he thinks of his son, and he tells Gojo that his kid's going to be sold to the Zenin family in a few years, and that Gojo can do whatever he wants. And then he dies standing up. So if you have any doubts about how badass Toji is, you should recollect on any anime character that dies standing up, defying the way that the human body works. If you die standing on your feet, you are a certified Chad. Adam from Record of Ragnarok, Yorichi from Demon Slayer, Whitebeard from One Piece. If you die standing up, you're as cool as it fucking gets. Now, the importance of Megumi to Toji is not really made that clear until his resurrection in the Shibuya incident. So, through Granny Ogami's curse technique, she brings back Toji's body through her grandson. The issue is that Toji is this bizarre freak of nature with no cursed energy, and the soul and the body are one, so Toji's consciousness is still brought back, despite the fact that Ogami only wanted to bring back his body. So he takes over the grandson's body, he kills Granny Ogami, but this leads to the technique going haywire, what with the person who cast the technique being dead, and Toji not having any cursed energy. He turns into this violent, strength-obsessed monster. He becomes a puppet of carnage, and is only interested in fighting the strongest people he can find. He essentially becomes what I guess would be like a caricature of himself. If you see the way that Toji fights in the Hidden Inventory arc with always this big grin on his face, and just the brutality of the way he fights, you would certainly get the impression that Toji is this mindless, bloodthirsty monster, and he sort of becomes that when he's resurrected. So he goes in, he no-diffs Dagon with Playful Cloud, which was probably a factor because of how awesome Playful Cloud is. But he takes Megumi and he tries to fight Megumi. And at the end of their fight, Megumi sort of gets the upper hand over Toji for just an instant. And I guess this show of strategy gives Toji a moment of clarity for just a moment. And he thinks back on when he was talking to Naobito, the head of the Zenin family, about what he was going to do with Megumi. And they were discussing prices for depending on when and what kind of technique Megumi would develop. They were talking about him like some sort of object or like some sort of prized domesticated animal. And as Toji is leaving that encounter, he's thinking, I don't care anymore, I don't care anymore. And the way he's repeating it to himself, much like the idea that he didn't care about his own pride, his own self-worth, is a lie. And he realizes this. And Megumi actually does mean something to him. So Toji asks Megumi what his name is, and he says it's Fushiguro. So Toji goes, oh, not Zenin? Great. And he kills himself. So what exactly does this encounter mean? Well, as I discussed earlier, Toji is obsessed with proving that Toji Fushiguro is better than the Zenin family thinks that he is. And he wasn't able to accomplish this in his life. However, his son Megumi still carries the name Fushiguro. He is not a member of the Zenin family, technically. I mean, he's, biologically a part of the Zenin family, but he carries the Fushiguro name instead. So, on paper, he doesn't really have any association with them. So, everything that Megumi accomplishes, all of the badass stuff that he will do, will go under the name Fushiguro. It will be part of the Fushiguro legacy. So, even though Toji was not able to stick it to the Zenin family in the way that he'd hoped he would, his legacy, his son, and whoever descends from him will be able to do that. And I think considering Megumi's name is where we really see that. Toji named Megumi before he even knew that he was a boy or girl, and the name Megumi means blessing. And when we think about the value that Toji places on Megumi, you could say that Toji's birth under the name Fushiguro and him not becoming a member of the Zenin family is a blessing for Toji, and that even though he's died, his name will still be able to carry on a legacy that is in defiance of the Zenin family. And I just think that's pretty great stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I have left to say about Toji. The guy is a huge badass. I'm hoping that the Shibuya incident and the events involving Toji will have a big influence on the characters that interacted with him. I'm hoping Megumi will look into his father more. We know that when Gojo met Megumi, Megumi didn't have any interest in his dad, and he thought that he was still alive. So hopefully after this arc, whenever Gojo gets out, Megumi will ask Gojo about him. He'll look into who his father was and learn more about him. And the other character we have to consider is Maki, who I discussed earlier, has goals and attributes very similar to Toji. When Toji shows up and takes Playful Cloud from her, she's shocked because she has never lost in a contest of physical strength to anyone before. And seeing someone who was in a very similar predicament to her being as fucking awesome as he was, I think that will hopefully inspire Maki that her goal of defying the Zenin clan and taking over despite her heavenly restriction is indeed a possibility, and will sort of reaffirm her conviction in accomplishing that goal. So Toji's a pretty important guy, and hopefully he will continue to be important in the future. I don't think he's going to come back again, because that would be like a really weird running trend. It's like, oh, Toji gets resurrected every 50 chapters. But no. Hopefully he stays dead, because I think both of his deaths were fairly satisfying narratively, and I think that Gege did a fantastic job establishing him as a character with the time that he was around. So, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell. I do Jujutsu Kaisen character discussions every other week, and I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reviews every week. So if you're interested in those, you should definitely subscribe to my channel. Make sure you don't miss any of those. If you enjoy other series such as Record of Ragnarok, Chainsaw Man, and Kengan Omega, I do videos on those series as well, so if you're interested in those, you should definitely check out my channel. If you enjoyed discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to it on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.